Nassau Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Hockey Writers.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 39 of the Nassau Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Hockey Writers Podcasting Network. I am James Nichols, and as always, I'm here with my good buddy, John Zella. What's up, pal?
Not a whole lot. Happy season's a week away.
Here we are. And today we are also joined by our official third member, AM New York's Joe Pantorno.
Fellas,
what's up, pal?
Doing well. Happy New Year. Happy new hockey year.
Yeah. How was your guys' holidays?
Quiet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Quiet year. Yeah. Just like everything else, right?
Yeah. That's if only.
just as quiet as the conversation between Lou Lamoriello and Mat Brazal. Am I right?
Yeah, too soon, I think.
Coming out swinging.
Well, let's talk about coming out swinging. John, you got something to say, pal?
Okay, so we're heading into this season, and there's a whole lot of different, whether that's projected points for a player, or where the honors are going to be. I really want Islander fans, and please, I'm one of you. I get it. Stop with this woe is me thing that everyone's against the Islanders and no one thinks that our players are good and stop. You're playing into the narrative. You're giving them clicks. You're giving them exposure. And that's kind of what it's all about. I mean, we have a podcast and we write, and that's kind of what we want people to read, our opinions on stuff. But you're kind of playing into this narrative, and I love that we kind of rallied around this prove them wrong thing. And it doesn't mean we can't do that. I'm not saying don't do that. And it's good fuel and it's good for the team, and you want them to play with a chip on their shoulder. That's when they're at their best. But as a fan base, we look really bad when they just bait us into conversations and arguments every single year. They're going to put us 17th out of whatever or 15th out of whatever all the time. Stop it. It doesn't do anything. It makes us look like a whiny fan base. Passion is fine, but we really have. I've been thinking about this for days. When did I tell you guys I was going to say this? Days ago.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it for a really long time, and I just keep seeing, especially as no one's going to sign here, or why Barzal and this, and stop.
I feel like somewhere in the world right now, Nick Alberga is listening to this and laughing in a pool of fire behind him, just
my
evilly. It's just because that's why he exists.
I know, and he's like, look, and he's really good at his job.
Oh, we love him.
In so much as baiting all types of fan bases. I think on the fans he did just follow him in general. I mean, he moved. I think he's on Hockey Central now. He's like a big deal. He's legit, and he knows what he's talking about too. But yeah, I mean, he's trying to be fun. I think it's good for somebody. He's around our age on this show, and presumably a lot of Islander fans. So he's being different than he's not Jeff Merrick, and he's not a lot of these guys that even Steve Dangle, like even these other Sportsnet guys or Hockey Central guys. He's kind of buying into the culture a little bit and bringing a lot of personality, but that doesn't mean just give him fuel every single time. I mean, if you want to, every now and again, you want to say but we're just doing it every single time. We, as in the fan base.
Oh, absolutely.
It just, don't be so easily offended by these rankings. It doesn't mean, and
it really doesn't.
On one hand, someone's saying the Islanders are going to have, 15 wins and then another thing has them fantasy, sleepers, and they're going to get 31 wins. And another thing comes out where they're going to get 31 wins. And you're like, okay, clearly this is a little bit of a toss up. Even looking at the Athletic, Dom Leshizins, he had a good model. It kind of throws the Islanders in this, he even starts with, this is an argument all the time between the analytics community and Islander fans and prove them wrong. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's just, we kind of let them get out in our skin too easily.
Look, I mean, and Joe, you can chime in on this too. We all write, we all have our own opinion. We all see the game in our own kind of way. You look at some of the analytical guys and, the Islanders aren't pretty analytically, and we all get it. But then you look at a guy like EJ Radick, who is on NHL Network, and he's, a veteran in the field. he has them winning the division. So it's just so subjective. It really just depends on how you think about, the team. In your mind, is Adam Pelech a good enough number one defenseman to help lead a team like the Islanders to, claiming what is it? What is the Mass Mutual East Division? Or do you think Adam Pelech? Who thinks that guy is any good? I mean, listen, as us three, we know that how valuable Adam Pelech is, but nobody outside of our fan base is like, oh, Adam Pelech, I need that guy on my team. Nobody thinks that. Nobody realizes that, and I guess it's just because it has a lot to do with maybe this year the Islanders have 2 nationally televised games, and not many people get exposure to the Islanders. Who really knows? But there's just a plethora of reasons why the Islanders don't get the credit that they deserve. And you're totally right, John. Like, fans are losing it over that, and they don't need to, because it's just one of those things where, once again, it's in my opinion likely to happen where Barry Trotz will do what he does and lead the pack and help prove him wrong again.
I think the problem is Islander fans will be the first one to say we're more than the sum of our parts. This is a team that plays together, that plays for one another, but they're not worried about points and individual accolades. And then they get annoyed that Adam Pelech or Pulak or whoever isn't leading some chart of top 10 or top 15 players in whatever position. You can't have both. They're either all playing a very specific role on a team, or they're the best at their position. Jack Eichel would be the best Islander.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But he's on the Sabres, and they suck. I don't know. I think I'd rather a guy who wasn't ranked top 10 in the league and whatever, and Mat Brazal, who's only had 60 points in the last few years, although he led the team with 85 his rookie year. Not a big deal. And, winning the Calder and all that kind of stuff, like, got accolades, not underrated, won the fastest skater. People know who he is. But when it's top 10 centers in the league, no, they're what they use to get to that point isn't what Mat Brazal brings on a Barry Trotz coach team. That's just not what it is.
Right.
It's the equivalent of, and it's right up our alley considering the jersey you're wearing right now, John. It's the equivalent of having a Ziggy Palffy on a Fisherman era Islanders team. What would Islanders fans rather have right now? A little less recognition in a team that goes to the Eastern Conference Final, or the opposite? But I will say this. The Islanders fans love to have this whole, like you said, woe is me, chip on their shoulder thing, until they actually get the attention. And I will say this in terms of nationally broadcast games, nationally televised games. The schedule came out, and here goes everybody. The Islanders only got 2 games. The Red Wings got 3. How is that possible? Nobody respects us. And then what happens when we're in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Philadelphia Flyers? Everybody's complaining about the announcers and the anti-Islanders bias. Same thing going into the conference finals against Tampa Bay. Same thing. Everybody hates us. So you know what? You can't have it both ways. So, I mean,
take the criticism. It means people are paying attention.
And plus, who wouldn't want to watch more of Brendan and Butch? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's a good point. You put us on, NBC and we lose Brendan and Butch.
There will be people who complain, or there will be people saying, "Well, why can't you have Brendan and AJ Malesko do the games on NBC?"
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That's not how it works. People have jobs.
Yes.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with that because we're gonna get into like models and different projections. There's just gonna be, there already has been, and there's gonna just continue to be, especially in a short season. I heard someone complaining that Sorokin wasn't on some rookie thing.
The Calder odds to win it.
Calder odds or whatever, and it's, who cares? Who cares? It doesn't matter. They're gonna go out there. They're assuming everything else just kind of falls into place. We all know what that is. They're virtually the same team, and they are projected to do pretty well. Yeah. It's kind of a toss up. I think the hard part is, and we're trying kind of jumping ahead. Only the top 4 teams in the division make it. There's no wild card. There's no nothing. So it's kind of hard. Usually, 5 teams from the Metro make it.
Yeah.
or even 6. Yeah. I mean, 3, 4, 5 teams make it.
It's going to be a sprint.
It's going to be a sprint. They're going to need to come out and they're going to need to be more consistent than they usually are throughout the whole season. They can't do 20 game chunks playing on their hockey. They got to be able to play more after game 25 and 30, especially this year. Is that around the? No, it's probably after the trade deadline. I don't know when the trade deadline is in terms of games necessarily, but yeah, they need to be a little bit more consistent, which is a whole different issue.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well,
that's
before we
that's
get
what
into that, let's.
That was my thoughts to open it up. I just wanted to get that on the table, just because it just always comes up. I see it. I'm on Twitter and I'm scrolling through, especially during training camp, stuff like that. It's just a mess.
Right. But before we get into, the whole postseason, like we kind of brought up and everything, let's just talk about the return to play dates. As most of you might know, puck drop is January 13th. It is January 14th for the New York Islanders. The trade deadline is April 12th. End of the regular season is May 8th. The expansion draft will be July 21st for the Seattle Kraken. The NHL draft will be July 23rd and 24th. And then free agent frenzy starts July 28th. So everything came together kind of quickly. You could see how condensed all this stuff is. It's going to be really interesting to see how, the season plays out. Hopefully, the league can do as good of a job as they did with the bubble, keeping all of the COVID cases down and everything. They did a really good job with that. So I have pretty high confidence that they'll do a good job with the regular season coming up as well. Speaking of the regular season, the NHL will have 4 to 6 player taxi squads in addition to their 23-man roster. In Arthur Staples' last article with The Athletic, he explains pretty complex how the situation is with that.
Well, it's basically mainly with like salaries and how players are going to be there and why it's important to move people at certain times, and why Boychuk's thing isn't official yet.
Right.
To make sure that they're as close to the cap as possible when they do make, have everything signed, so they're over the cap a little bit, so that their cap kind of reset is 81 point whatever it's supposed to be. It'll be 81.4, I think, after Boychuk, and assuming Barzal resigns. I think he put $7 million in that one article. So it's a little complex. We don't want to get too deep into that, assuming that you've read all this. We've kind of had a little bit of a break there to end 2020.
Yeah. The schedule will be 56 games though this year. And as you mentioned before, we can get into it now. The top 4 teams will make the postseason.
Yeah, I think what was really interesting, and I heard it on another show about something aligned with this. Teams that wouldn't normally be playing the Stanley Cup final will have that opportunity. That would normally both be in the Eastern Conference. I thought what was also interesting was that Dallas and Tampa, who played each other in the final, are in the same division.
Yep.
And so that it's kind of creating some new rivalries. Like they'll be playing each other a bunch the year after, the season after, months, single digit months after they play each other in the final. That that'll be interesting for sure.
Speaking of the divisions, they are, as of today, now sponsored. And I hinted at it a little bit before. The Islanders will be playing in the Mass Mutual East Division. The other 3 divisions are Honda West Division, the Discover Central Division, and the Scotiabank North Division.
Joe, you're shaking your head.
And right, Joe's shaking his head right now because there was a ton of feedback on this, and it was so overwhelmingly negative. What is the NHL doing? Why are they doing this, that, and the other thing? Do you guys want the game to grow? Because I don't understand. This, to me, first of all, I don't care. Second of all, I know for a fact that come tomorrow or today when you guys are listening to this, it will just be, in your mind, the East Division or the Central Division or the West. And nobody's going to call it the Discover, the Mass Mute. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. But the NHL is making money. And Joe, I think you put it best. What was that tweet that you put today?
So basically, I put there are only 2 people that should actually care about this deal: the people who are writing the check and the people who are receiving the check.
Beautifully said.
And I guess we're just not fans of the NHL making money. I guess
Exactly.
we want it to be the fourth of the big four leagues forever,
Right.
and always the
Well-
little brother of the MLB and the NBA and the NFL. So whatever. I guess we don't want the game to grow and get new fans and
Right.
new exposures and new broadcast opportunities. Get
Right.
over it. Get over it.
And this may not be, I think we tweeted this from the NHP account. I don't think that this is necessarily additional money. This may be just making good on deliverables. Because there won't be fans, because there won't be
Right.
whatever, they may have existing contracts with all. This is why these all look really familiar, is because they're all really big sponsors of the NHL. So I'm surprised like Bridgestone isn't on there. They're another really big one. But they might just be making good on existing contracts. This may not be additional money. I don't know
Right.
anything about knowing. In my world, in fundraising, when stuff like this happens and events change or things like that, or whatever someone's name is supposed to be on and it changes, you adapt and you change. It doesn't mean it's additional. They don't pay more, but it changed.
The bottom line here is that the NHL, as opposed to the other leagues, are more heavily reliant on revenue from ticket sales. They're not getting that right now. The league needs money. And I don't know how, true this might be next year when they're trying to figure out, hey, are we going to do this again? But according to Greg Wyshynski, this is a 1-year thing. They've already said that this is a 1-year thing with the advertisements and everything. We'll see if that stands true because, like I said, the NHL and Joe said the NHL is, you could say it's fourth out of the four core sports in terms of revenue, but they might get a taste of the money. And, when the fans come back, that little extra money might be good for the league. Who knows?
I've
Helmet.
heard Friedman say multiple times there will be ads on jerseys eventually.
There already
just
are.
need the money.
There already are ads on jerseys. There is a CCM sticker on the helmet right here if it's a CCM helmet. There's an Adidas logo on the back. There's ads
And they
on
pay money
jerseys.
for that. You
They
understand.
do.
So if you ever see, and I used to be like a kind of a gear nerd, if you ever see things and you're like, that's definitely not a CCM helmet, that's definitely, or gloves or something, they rebrand them based on who
Sure.
can be in the NHL. I think Oposo for a while wore Torspo gloves. Now they don't have rights in the NHL anymore, so you don't see that. Like, there's certain things that are companies that make hockey equipment that are not in the NHL. It doesn't mean they're not being used.
Right.
Players they repaint sticks, they cover up logos on skates. It all gets changed. They all have to kind of pay to be there.
Right.
So all this stuff it's all a big advertisement. Years ago, there wasn't ads on the boards or the ice, and
Right.
now it's a normal thing. There wasn't an ad on the glass behind the goalie that's
Right.
superimposed for TV. It all changes.
Right.
I am a little disappointed, however, that the East is not sponsored by Honda because it would have been the perfect thing to replace the Honda SUV or vehicle in the corner of the Barclays Center. Would have given Islanders fans more things to complain about. So I think that was a big missed opportunity there by the NHL. You dropped the ball. So
That's what we should be angry about.
So-
That's the big fumble on this.
Bottom line here, really though, is that the league is bringing in some revenue, and it's not that big a deal. Look, the jerseys, the ads on jerseys, it'll never, in my opinion, get to the KHL or not even the KHL, the European leagues, right, where it's literally every inch of the jersey and the socks and the pants. It's never going to get to that. If they put one on the helmet, maybe in the shoulder of a jersey, that's probably going to be it.
Yeah, what I think my worry is, and some other people like the PPG logo on the Penguins helmet
It's pretty bad.
is terrible. They didn't even
Pretty bad. I don't know if you
attempt to
guys
make
saw the Rangers got Northwell Health, which I had a hunch that might have been something the Islanders got. What do you think it might be for the Islanders? Because now I originally thought it might be UBS. Had a hunch it could be Northwell, but now the Rangers got it. But also Toronto and I believe Calgary both have Scotiabank, so maybe they both get Northwell.
Yeah, I was thinking UBS. I mean, for nostalgia purposes, I said they should go with Wendy's just for the heck of it. For everybody. No, but
Or
again,
PC Richard.
exactly. But I think fans have to dispel the notion that sports jerseys are like these sacred garbs that can't be touched. And I mean, it's something that I've kind of had to come to terms with too, because I was like, how can you have an ad on, the Red Wings jersey or the Blackhawks jerseys or even the Rangers? I mean, those are the original six. They don't deserve to have ads. Get with it. And again,
Right.
we said it before we went on here. It doesn't matter whether you're sitting on the couch or you're sitting in the stands in the arena. You're not going to be able to see the ad on the helmet.
Very good point.
Again, just get over it. Your favorite team's still playing.
I think there's kind of two parts to this. I don't like the idea of an ad on jersey or wherever. Am I going to complain about it? No. I don't like it. That's fine to not like it. I don't think anyone's saying you. If your tweet was, "Man, I would really not prefer this. Kind of looks dumb." That's about as far as it needs to go. Like it doesn't need to be this like 13 tweet thread rant about the sanctity of some random 6 teams that made it out of World War II that were just magically called the original 6, even though it wasn't. And it's been around 100 years, but has it been around 100? Stop. You don't need it's like this big conspiracy theory. It's just stupid.
I somehow had a conversation going on in my mentions that turned from the NHL getting ads on their helmets and on the division names, and it somehow turned into, well, James Dolan owns the Islanders and they're just tenants at the UBS arena, and I'm like, what world are we living in right now? What is happening that we are going so deep into conspiracy land that we're going from ads on jerseys to James Dolan owns the Islanders? I'm confused. Didn't Ledecky and Malkin just buy the extra 15% off of Charles Wong's company? I mean, where are we here?
His estate, yeah.
His estate. I don't. It's bonkers. There's ads. They're making money. The game is growing.
You want the salary cap to be flat? You want this to be just a constant issue for teams?
You want that top 6 forward? Because this is how it happens.
And it's got to, I think what's really important is the game's got to grow in Canada. I think, people were complaining about the divisions and 4 teams get in. It kind of guarantees a Canadian team goes pretty far. Hint, I know this is heresy. I know what I'm about to say is heresy. You want Toronto to do well in this league. It makes everybody money.
You're not wrong. And I'll tell you this, going a little off script here, but I did read today that there were rumblings around the league that they kind of are toying with the idea and think that it's good for the league to, after this season, keep that all-Canadian division.
I heard that as well. That was a Friedman thing on 31 Thoughts, a podcast.
Yes.
I don't know if I like that. It seems kind of funky. I think if there were more Canadian games, if there were more rivalry games, I think coming out of the last lockout, one of the last lockouts, there were more of those like interdivisional conference games that kind of built up those rivalries a little bit. And I think that would be good for Canada. I think you want to see the Battle of Alberta. You want to see Battle of Ontario, or any of those teams playing together against one another. Canada just kind of has this kind of built-in thing. So if it was one less game against a U.S. team and one more game or 2 against Canadian teams, I don't know about a division. They just need to play each other more.
And that's fine. But also in the same breath, that kind of plays into the notion that, Canada has this mightier than thou approach where we're going to isolate ourselves and have our own division, and we're better than you and we'll thumb our noses down because we invented the game and yada yada yada. So share, just share with us. And I don't know, geographically speaking, it really doesn't make much sense either, because
the time zones.
you're having heavier inter-country, whatever you want to call it.
Or there's like literally across the continent. If you're gonna have Montreal play Vancouver a bunch of times, that's expensive. That's but it's I think like I said, I think if it's one more game or if it's a 2 games in a weekend, I know fans don't want to see the same, like they're saying they don't, some fans are saying they don't want to see the same team twice in a weekend like the AHL typically does, where they play 2 games, a Friday night game and a Saturday night game against the same team in the same city. But that builds up the rivalries, and no one minds in the playoffs. All of a sudden, that's fine, right? We want to see those things and those, not necessarily more fights, but just kind of like the blood boil a little bit with the players.
Well, John, I think you said it well. You don't really have to realign the divisions; just have some more games against those other teams, and that makes sense because before this upcoming season, the Rangers and the Islanders would only play 4 times a year. Add an extra game or 2 into that season, and things get a little more heated.
It was 6 not very long ago.
Right. You know what I'd love to see though? If you want to build off that Canadian only thing, carve out a chunk, not a chunk, but a week of the schedule, maybe around New Year's, and while they do the Winter Classic down here, have all the Canadian teams in one place do some kind of outdoor, not tournament, but just have them all play a slate of outdoor games. That's
pretty cool.
Place. Go back to the roots of Canadian hockey, wherever you want to say the game was invented, and there it is.
Well, the Heritage Classic does a really good job of that.
Yes. Yep, exactly.
But to have more than one game would be cool. To have, if you're going to have Battle Alberta and the Battle of Ontario, back-to-back days, Saturday and Sunday night or afternoon or whatever.
Yeah, they could call it Hockey Week in Canada. It's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, hockey, yeah.
And even if there is the opportunity, I mean, obviously the scheduling would be a little funky or it might, rub people the wrong way. But you could even make it a little tournament where everybody still plays the same amount of games, but, if you keep winning, you keep moving on and you get a stupid little trophy. And
or if there was a preseason tournament or something.
Yeah.
Something.
Hell.
Well, yeah. In the AHL years ago, there was like an Empire State thing. I don't think they actually played a tournament or anything, but they got a trophy at the end of the year. It's kind of like the Rangers, Devils, and Islanders. Yeah, they kind of do that little competition during the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Joe is Team Chaos. I think that's where Joe wants to see it. Everything, things change, and
I want a third line of Bellows, Pajot, and Wallstrom. I want chaos everywhere. I want Joshua Kent to come from the rafters. Bring it on. Chaos everywhere.
Hey, I'm with you there, Joe. I'm totally with you there. Moving on, the Seattle Kraken, sort of Islanders related news here. The Seattle Kraken named Jason Bottarelli, the New York Islanders' Jennifer Bottarelli's brother, as an assistant GM today. So, Seattle Kraken were feeling a little bit of FOMO because there was a lot of, hockey action going on, and they got nothing going on just yet. So they announced a new assistant GM hire. So good for them. But at this point, let's move on to On the Island. Our good buddy Joe here was at camp not only today but yesterday as well on day 1 and day 2. Joe, give us some impressions. What'd you see when you were at the rink? They were at Northwell, right? They were at the practice arena.
Yep.
Give us some impressions. What'd you think? What'd you see?
Yeah, really the name of the game right now, and Anders Lee kind of alluded to it yesterday, it's all about just getting those legs and lungs together, where, they're actually kind of taking the momentum from their return to play over the summer, where they had such a short timeline to get ready to restart and basically jump into the playoffs. They're using that same mindset to kind of get in and get ready for this regular season. Because, again, at the end of the day, from when training camp starts to when puck drop is, it's only 11 days for them. So they really kind of have to hustle.
Yeah.
So the first 3 days of camp, so as we're talking, the first 2 days and then tomorrow, it's really going to just be about making sure that everybody's in the right condition. Barry Trotz, though, already said that he loves the condition that everybody's in. Nobody really came in that they were lagging. And now it's just a process of bringing the best team. That's what he said, bringing the best team into the season. So really, for the most part, not everybody's job is safe. So if you're a veteran and you're getting outperformed by a youngster, guess what? You're gonna lose your job. So that was certainly intriguing, especially because there have been talks of Oliver Wahlstrom possibly breaking into the third line, and then today he even mentioned Kiefer Bellows' name, the growth that he showed. So those are two youngsters that you definitely want to keep an eye on. But what definitely struck me from yesterday, from Monday, was his praise of Bodie Wild. And I remember last year at camp, I mean, I was pretty struck by him. He stood out because he skates really well for a D-man, a younger D-man his age, and where he doesn't have this prodigy-like reputation as, per se, a Noah Dobson. And I'm pretty sure last year he was he wasn't, really keeping up with, but he was right there with Barzal. And I'm not saying he's like this burner speedster or whatever, but, there was a certain point where, in a scrimmage, Barzal's going down the right side and, Bodie Wild's a pace or two behind him. So that was something that definitely stuck with me. And, I guess his growth and his recovery from a few knocks here and there, it's certainly impressed Barry Trotz. And again, I think it's a name to watch for. And we talked about it. And initially I said that maybe there's a chance he can make the taxi squad, but at the same time, we might want to get as many games as possible for him. So, we might see him in the AHL for another year or two, but who knows? We might see him making some noise sooner rather than later. And then obviously two more things. It's a combination of the Ilya Sorokin watch and the Matthew Barzal watch. Obviously in these practice settings, you can't fully see what Sorokin is capable of doing. But what I will say and what I have seen from him is that he's really meticulous. You can tell he's a student of the game. He's open to any kind of pointers that he's getting from, say, Greco and Korn. And just that meticulous kind of approach is what's going to help him assimilate to life in the NHL that much faster. I kind of just saw it when he was doing some side work earlier today. It was something as simple as tracking the puck when you're on your pads, when you're on your knees. It was just going through the motions, how he was fully doing it, fully buying in. You don't see that a lot from goalies, and especially a youngster who's so highly touted. But again, it's something that's certainly promising, and it's going to excite Islander fans. But he seems sure of himself. He seems confident. He moves the puck pretty well. His lateral movement in the few instances or flashes that we saw were astonishing. So it's Islanders fans have every reason to be excited right now, and it's kind of cushioning the notion of them still waiting for Matthew Barzal. We're all kind of, the few media members that are there at the training center. That's the first thing you do when you show up. Well, he's on the training camp roster, but it's also take a look. Is he out there? Maybe he's just going to show up. 0 for 2 so far, and we'll see maybe if he makes an appearance before the start of the regular season.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, maybe he'll just show up, because everyone kind of expected, and nobody's sitting there thinking, I wonder if Dmytro Timashov is going to be out there, but he was. And it was interesting because earlier in the day, we had assumed, because he was on the ice, that he was under contract. Turns out later, our friend Molly Walker tweeted that although he's on the ice, he's not under contract yet, but they own his rights, so he's allowed to skate. And everybody was like, well, why isn't Mat Brazal out there? Isn't he allowed to skate? This, and that, and the other thing. Turns out today that David Pagnotta of the fourth period reported that Timashov is in fact under a 1-year contract. We don't know the terms yet, much like Corey Schneider, much like Matt Martin, who actually we kind of do know. We'll get to that later. But a couple of the other guys who are per cap friendly under PTOs. But give us an impression that you had on Timashov, because I don't think a lot of Islander fans know about him, but he got some pretty good praise from Trotz. I think he's pretty happy with everyone he sees. But Timashov is somebody new. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of shows this semblance of being a playmaker. Got pretty good legs. He's got some speed on him. He was one of the last guys out on the ice for the first group today, and he was just kind of going through the motions where he was really just emphasizing those strides and making sure that he's that foundation is right, and that's good because that suggests that it's somebody where somebody who could possibly fit into that Barry Trotz system where it's paying attention to the little things, making sure everything in your backyard is set before you go out there. He's got a decent set of hands. I'm not going to go out there and say that he's going to be a 20 goal scorer or anything like that, but this is a maybe a potential bottom six forward who could, maybe contribute soon. But again, it's too early to tell, and it's definitely hard to keep an eye on a lot of these guys because the problem is they don't have any numbers on the back of their jerseys. Where we're sitting, when there's 20 guys on the ice at the same time, you lose them quick. And
you joke that Molly had binoculars.
Yeah, you forgot to bring yours.
No, I don't even own a pair, but seriously, the first thing I did, I got home, I went on Amazon, and I got a pair of binoculars because you're looking at the back of the little numbers on the back of the helmet.
Right.
And you think, oh, I can tell them by face, but when they're flying by you, it's hard. I'm like, oh, that's Jordan Eberle. He's like, wait a second, that's Andrew Lack. What am I doing? Do I not know this stuff anymore? But it's definitely a challenge. But you lose them, so it's kind of hard to keep track on everybody and really hone in on, say, like a Timashov. But that was certainly striking today. Was him just being that last guy out and just making sure that he's doing all the right things to make that good impression.
Yeah,
he did make the Leafs roster, and leapfrog a couple of guys last season before he was picked up on waivers in Detroit, and that speaks volumes. That's a pretty stacked team on offense. So to make an impression and be good enough to do that, and they have some other guys too that they can certainly bring up, and the Marlies have been pretty good the last few years. So I think it's a really good pickup. It's definitely one of those you'd think it would be, instead of Ross Johnston, it's probably a guy like Timashov, where he's a 13th guy that can kind of slot in here and there. At a certain point, though, I don't understand where the money's coming from. Maybe we can talk about that after we kind of chat about Martin. But that's kind of where a lot of these guys they're on Kuhnackel's on a PTO and this, and I think things like the taxi squad make it easier but more complicated. Because Schneider's not going to be on the NHL cap; he's going to be on the AHL cap. That's so there's kind of these games that you can play, and if anyone's going to know how to play them immediately, it's going to be Lou, or circumvent it one way or another. He's going to just figure it out.
So it's interesting because and getting back to Timashov real quick, he's a guy that Lou Lamoriello actually drafted, so he knows the kind of player that he is. It's interesting to see how these deals start to work out. I wonder how much Timashov is actually going to be signed for. Is he going to break that $1 million threshold? I guess we could talk about Matt Martin now. It was revealed today per Arthur Staple that he received a 4-year deal at $1.5 million per year. First impression for me, I was shocked. I saw 4 years and I was like, 4? I didn't expect 2. I expected 1. I expected a 1-year deal, and it was going to be a by committee thing. Every year it was going to be, okay, you had a good year. You showed you had a little bit left in the tank. Let's do it again. I saw 4, and I had to sit down for a minute and be like, whoa, we signed Matt Martin to a 4-year deal. And of course, and I said this to you guys off air. I'll say it again on air. I don't really care. You have guys all the time who are like, oh, nobody wants to sign with the Islanders. Nobody wants to sign with the Islanders. Somebody wants to sign with the Islanders for 4 years. Now we're like, why are we signing this guy? So it's like,
I think it's just who it is. And this,
I get it.
You don't want to, at the time, the Ladd deal is a decent deal. at best, right? You think by now he was going to tail off anyway. The issue is that he was bad for a long time and injured for a long time. If he was good in the beginning, I mean, he did score 20 goals with the Islanders. People forget.
So
People forget Brooklyn pretty quickly. But I
that's
think
true.
I think that the issue is that it's 4 years at $1.5 million. It's not a big deal. But when you add up, that fourth line in particular, and the fact that kind of moving forward, a lot of us thought he was going to get a league min deal.
I did. I really did.
And you'd think that, Bergeron and all these guys and Crosby, they're all taking team-friendly deals. And look, the Islanders owe guys like Martin and Boychuk and these guys that have done everything for this team. However, not at the expense of, what at the end of the day, if you're dealing with Barzal, and next year you have a litany of players that you need to get re-signed, including a fellow fourth liner in Cizikas, and not only, and Sorokin and Pelech and Bavillier. I don't know that I even want to have to worry about $750,000. I kind of want to just know that it's there. And I think on top of that, my issue is, why are we paying Johnston $1 million a year to be a 13th forward? Is he really not capable of playing every game, 8 minutes a game? Is he ultimately, like, I don't understand.
There was a time he played exactly on the first line.
It was
he played well, right? Like I don't, and I think we probably talked about this before. I don't understand. And this was a deal that I believe Lamoriello upped him, if I'm not mistaken, right? Am I making that up? This was a recent new contract. It's like $1 million a year for 3 years. What's that?
For Johnston?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was recent. And
right.
It the whole thing was he was going to slot right in for Matt Martin. He was the younger, a little bit more skilled, softer hands version of Matt Martin. So what? I mean, younger. The game that Matt Martin plays is tough. He's going to be 36 at the end of this, and maybe it's a variable deal, and maybe that was, maybe that's in 2 years if he's banged up and can't go anymore, and the mayor wants to step down, he does. He does what Boyd. And if you can find a way to get rid of it, it's $1.5 million. Even if it's not all of it, it's not that much money.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's fine.
You said it well. He's the mayor of Long Island, right? And Joe, you can speak to this more if you got something from anybody this morning. I don't know if you spoke to any of them, but from what I saw, a lot of the players were like, "I'm stoked that Matt Martin is back for 4 years." Am I wrong, Joe?
No. Jordan Eberle said it. Said he called him a great friend, a great teammate.
Yeah.
And Barry and Trotz himself. It's culture over flash.
And that's exactly what it is.
And I'll tell you what he said, and I got it right here. He said, Matt has the intangibles. He's a good piece of the culture, the big C word, on the island, and I think you saw in the playoffs how valuable Matt is to our team. He's just a good, reliable pro.
I mean, 5 goals in 22 games is nothing to sneeze at in the playoffs last year.
Not. And it's, again, if that's not the Islander way, I don't know what is. So, listen, I think it's partly, the Islanders keep their glue guy, and I think it's partly, here's a reward for being such a good soldier, and kind of.
But is this the time for that? And that
no.
I don't know where. I don't understand how you do it.
I don't either, and I'm not the bookkeeper. I am not a financial person. There's a reason why I took a double period's worth of math in high school. I don't. I do words, not numbers. Words I don't do too well either. So.
Wow, I haven't thought about that in such a long time. That stuff like that existed. Oh my god.
Sure. But it's and again, that is, and it was the most mind-numbing thing throughout the offseason. It was always like, well, what if the Islanders do this? And everything was, well, what are you going to sign Barzal with?
Right.
What money? Everything was what? Just it's not the fans' job to worry about it, and it's our job to speculate about it. And I have to imagine, again, at the end of the day, regardless of what they think of him, Lamoriello is a Hall of Fame executive. He has to have a plan, or else.
So that is a perfect segue to my next point, and thank you, Joe. I wonder if there's a corresponding move to this because, we know Lamoriello works in mysterious ways, but we also know he's not. I mean, fans, and again, it always comes back to the fans, have been talking about how he just hands out these horrible contracts. Varlamov's contract is horrible. Komarov's contract is horrible. This, that, and the other thing. Yeah, well, we haven't been as successful as we've been since he's gotten here. He's brought success. So he's building a culture on Long Island, and that's what I think that this Martin deal is all about, helping keep that culture going. But I do wonder if there is a corresponding move here because the money is, although not a lot, under a cap crunch era, we kind of, we see how small that window is now getting. That $1.5 million off of the almost 10 now becomes 8.5, or maybe a little less.
And you're going to sign Timashov and you're going to sign Green.
Exactly.
And
So,
I think so. What I keep hearing too is Hickey is the guy that they're trying to trade him because his bonus is already paid for the season.
Yeah.
They get the 2.5. The team that receives him doesn't have to worry about the cash. They just have the cap problem.
Right.
Depending on who it is, I don't see why he wouldn't fit in a Detroit, right? Tons of experience, still a young guy. He can fit in with that culture.
Or he's
a tough kid.
Ottawa.
Any of these teams that are trying to build up their, they don't want to worry about cash, but they have the cap room. And he's only got one more year after this year. So even if he's your seventh guy, he's reliable. He was injured, but he had a really good career at the Islanders. He's a former first-round pick with LA.
Yeah,
so
4th overall. Yeah,
nothing to ignore. So he was a big part of the Islanders. Early 2010s runs,
right?
14 to 16, and that kind of time period there, up until he got hurt. So, moving that $2.5 million off the cap would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Eventually, Boychuk's number goes in there, so you could have a little bit over 10 million still, and then to have Brazal sign. Now, depends on what Timashov is going to get, and depends on how they can kind of move the money around for Lad and taxi squads and this and that. So I think what Staple had said is a lot of these guys will wind up being not on that taxi squad, as they'll be on the regular roster for longer than you want, to make sure that the cap's in the right position for when the season starts, so that they can bank money for the cap and have room to do that. That's the key. So it'll be confusing until things shake out.
Yeah, and someone had tweeted at me today, like, what's going to happen for guys in the future? What's going to, is Casey Cizikas going to get a deal? And I had said, if they're keeping Matt Martin around for another 4 years, I have to think in my mind there is also a plan in place to try and keep Cizikas around for almost as long, because just as much as Matt Martin brings, the Islander culture, Casey Cizikas is right there with him. He brings that Islander, integrity. He brings the grit. He is an Islander through and through. I have to think that they're going to try and keep that tandem together. Now, I believe there's only a year or two left on Cal Clutterbuck's deal.
He's got this season and next season at 3.5.
So I could see him being the odd man out here, and Ross Johnston could take over in that spot once
in 2 years or sooner than that. Like you have Seattle in 2 years. You have Seattle take him with a sweetener.
That would be great. That would be great. Until he's gone, or once he's gone, I think that Ross Johnson, no problem, could step in, and that Johnston, Cizikas, and Martin line could be fine.
I think that's still okay. I think I prefer this season Clutterbuck, Cizikas, and Johnson, but
sure,
in the future, having Cizikas and Johnson as the kind of core of that fourth line, and trying to find somebody else to fill that fourth line role when Martin ultimately goes on LTIR in 2 years, or finds his way not on the roster, for every single game or something like that. And there's cap room or something. Yeah. I think my issue is that how do you get Clutterbuck? You can't wait 2 years.
it's
he's
gonna
already
be
dealing with kind of nagging injuries. He plays a really heavy game. And
yeah.
he's fearless. I don't know how long he can last. I don't know how much longer after this year he can last.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the feeling and 3 fingers on his hand.
Right.
He just and he said he's been seeing doctors like crazy, and he said there's a chance that it could be permanent because they're not too concerned about it. He goes, but it's still a possibility. So, it's how much longer can he sustain this style of play? And obviously, it's not for the faint of heart, and he's done it better than most people have.
Right.
This millennia, you could say. So
I don't think he makes it past this season. I think after this season, he might just call it. He might give it all, and then that last year he may just kind of can't do it anymore. He's gonna
Like
be 34 this season.
like a Boychuk kind of situation.
I don't know that it's gonna be like because of something big. It might just be like, look, it's just a collection of injuries. The body's breaking down. Can't do it.
That'd be an unceremonious way for him to go out, obviously.
I mean, you hope that they make it far this year,
yeah.
and that he can kind of say, okay, good,
Right.
help them get to where they're going to go, handing the torch.
Nobody obviously is rooting for that.
Right.
Absolutely not. You want him to be healthy. I mean, look, he could be the next playoff hero. He can be Matt Martin this year, and
Very
pop
true.
5-6 goals in the playoffs. If they make it that far, but he can. I was excited when he joined the team. I think that deal. I don't know how to look at it anymore because Clutterbuck's been such a big part of this team and an important part of that fourth line and blah blah blah. But Niederreiter kind of blossomed a little bit and is a very good goal scorer, and that could have been who we're hoping Wallstrom or Bellows could be. We had the guy
Right.
years ago, so I don't know how you look at that trade one way or another, but he's been good. And I was excited when he got here because he was a 15 goal scorer. I really thought, I was like, man, a middle six guy, the Islanders could really use a third line guy that can score. And, he kind of doubled down on the hitting heavy part of his game and let up on the goal scoring a little bit. But when he scores, he snipes.
Yeah,
So
he
he's
does have a
capable of
wicked
it.
shot.
He is a great wrister. He's a right-handed shot too, so every line kind of has their righties, and it's a good mix of players. He's good on the penalty kill. He's kind of fearless. He's a veteran guy. Obviously Trotz and Lou like him around, but I wouldn't be surprised if after this year, he kind of evaluates things. He's like, the hand's not getting better. Still don't have feeling. He had a serious back injury. I believe he had surgery, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of laying it all out, but I don't know how much, Cat's only got 9 lives and he's using up quite a bit of them.
Right.
It's funny because I was just watching him today. At camp, and I was like, and obviously I don't have the same mental fortitude as a professional hockey player, but I was like, how can you perform? Just know it. Like it's there. Like I'd be
Thinking about it.
And maybe that's because I'm kind of a hypochondriac in that sort of way, but at the same time, it's like, how do you know you got a grip on the stick? Like, how do you know? I don't know. So you also have to consider the mental burden that comes with this and what's going to come with those continuous doctor trips that he alluded to and stuff like that. And it's an unfair situation for him, again, especially because he's been this kind of heart and soul guy along with Matt Martin for the last however many years it's been, 4, 5, 6 years. So, but in terms of that trade, I mean, the relationship with Nino and the Islanders was so rotten. I mean, it is what it is, and I think most Islander fans under those parameters would have done the whole thing over again. I think for the most part.
They didn't handle a lot of prospects around that time very well, so it shouldn't surprise anybody. Just last thing on the Martin thing before we move on, I think what's frustrating too is when you think about an extra $750,000. I don't know what the difference would have been to actually get Taves re-signed. To keep that defensive core together, that top 4. Especially because Boychuk then goes and announces an unofficial retirement or whatever they're going to call it. To then have Martin sign at $1.5 million and then to acquire Timashov, for what we're assuming is a hallmark card to Detroit. I it's confusing. Like, again, I'm not a general manager, and James, you said before he's a Hall of Fame general manager. That doesn't mean he didn't make his fair share of real dumb moves.
Sure.
I mean, you look at a guy like Komarov, who didn't do anything on Long Island, that played for Lou in Toronto, but didn't do a damn thing for the Islanders. Now, he's been a good soldier, and Trotz likes him, and blah blah blah. But I think there's a lot of guys that are you can't keep paying character. Cizikas is a different story. I'd put him outside of that because you got to be strong down the middle. You got to have a good goaltending and strong up the middle if you're going to do anything in this league. So I think he is worth a payment if that comes next year. And he's our age, right? He's 30, maybe 31 or something. Like he's not old, but he's skilled enough that he can still go for it. If he got a 3 or 4 year deal next year, I'm not blinking at that.
Right.
It's not a big deal. You want him on the team.
It's a 20-goal scorer 2 years ago. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
there.
And I mean, again, great on the penalty kill. He's versatile. I for a long time I kind of wanted him to move up the lineup a little bit. If Peugeot wasn't around, I really wish Colbert could take that fourth line spot and he could move up and play with some skill. He's never really had that opportunity. He'd still managed to score 20 goals a few years ago, but yeah, I mean, I wonder what could have happened. Like I don't math good, so I don't know what all that looks like. What the difference is between you don't sign, you don't need a Timashov guy. You have kids on cheap contracts. Why are you bringing Timashov on? You brought Cernak or whatever his name is, or on. He's around. There's other guys that you can kind of pick up, or within the organization. You're gonna sign this. You're gonna give up Taves. I don't know. It's all of a sudden the defense is different. That scares me. That's probably the most scary thing, frankly, besides, maybe more than the third line, in my opinion. Giving Dobson those minutes, giving Green those minutes on a condensed schedule, back-to-back games. Like, I know you want to trade Hickey for his $2.5 million, but I've said this like throughout the offseason, and James is probably sick of me saying this. And James is going to say, I've never seen Green make a mistake. and that's great, but he's 38 years old. They're going to play a whole hell of a lot of back-to-backs and a whole hell of a lot of, on a condensed schedule, three games in 4 nights, 4 games in 6 nights. He's going to get tired. And so you're going to give Hickey up.
So
you're going to rely on another young guy that with very little, Aho is going to be the answer. That's who we're going to, okay. Yeah. Every 10 games. So after not playing games, he's going to get 6 games or 7 games, and you're going to expect him to do well.
So
and no one's going to succeed under that. Forget about Hickey, Aho, whatever. No one's going to play well. So it's kind of like compounds these issues. I don't know. It gets me worried.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to what we were speculating about what the fourth line is going to look like, and we've continued to speculate. This whole offseason, what's the third line going to look like? But what we do know is the D pairs. Trotz already confirmed those. It's going to be your top pair of Pulock and Pelech, Leddy and Mayfield, Green and Dobson. The good news is Dobson's made considerable strides according to Trotz. Am I wrong there?
No, not at all. He said it today that he expects Noah Dobson to get a sizable chunk of ice time throughout this season. So it's basically going into last year. It was they were faced with that tough decision of sending him back to juniors, or he'd have to be with the big club just because of the age limitations in juniors and everything like that. So
right.
It was one of those things where the Islanders like to overcook their prospects, and that's a term from Trotz himself. But the Islanders played it perfectly, and Trotz said himself that they did it perfectly. And again, if you don't mind, this is what Trotz said. He goes, I think from just the standpoint of what we did with him last year, he's a high-end, high IQ type of young player who played really deep into the Memorial Cup 2 years in a row, Team Canada, has a number of evaluation camps, but he was never able to train his body or get stronger. It was all about getting rest because of that busy schedule. So he says that the plan was to get him in 35 to 40 games, get him on a regimen, see if he can get a little bit stronger. And throughout that time, he was around professionals for a year. And he was getting into that NHL culture. He was surrounding himself with NHL veterans. And he was able to grow. And he was able to mature. And that's when he said, and I'm quoting him here, I think he's ready to take on a big piece of ice time this year. It's his time. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, for Trotz to say that about someone as young as Dobson, we know he doesn't normally throw his young guys out there. We've been begging and pleading for Wahlstrom or Bellows to crack a lineup, Josh Hosang to crack a lineup, some sort of young prospect to come through, break through, and crack the lineup. But we repeatedly get Michael Dal Cole or Leo Komarov.
Oh my God, Dal Cole too. Oh my God.
I'm sorry,
and then Kunako's on like there on the roster on a Pete. Jesus, and you got to give up Taves. You got to keep all these Looney Tunes around, and you can't keep Taves. What did Taves sign for in Colorado?
4 years at I forget the AAV. It climbs though. I think in his final year he's making something like 5.25.
And that's smart because I think with how high escrow is in this year and possibly next year, they're kind of like front diving the contracts, as I heard Jeff Merrick say, or Elliot Friedman. So it's interesting how those contracts, and I wouldn't be surprised if whatever comes out for Barzal looks like that too.
I know, yeah, I wouldn't be. I believe Pierre-Luc Dubois in Columbus got a similar kind of deal, and I had tweeted.
I think that's a different reason.
I wouldn't be surprised if, but
I think he's trying to. I think both sides wanted to make sure he can get out.
Well,
so either this season or in the off season, he had a deal cheap enough and short enough to trade.
And I think that Barzal gets a similar kind of deal that progresses like that, not to obviously move out of Long Island, but I think that he gets a structure where the AAV climbs year to year, just because things are so financially it's a struggle financially for everyone. So
Taves' deal was 4.1.
That was the AAV. Yeah. Thank you.
And I again, all these things add up, and I don't understand. I don't. You have all these guys, and I know you can't. This isn't like the NFL or the NBA, which I don't understand why the NHL doesn't do this, where they can just like cut guys. Both sides are like, nope, this isn't working. Okay, and and it's just this kind of like mutual understanding or whatever the deal is. Like you got lads sticking around. Like there's like 10 guys for essentially a spot and a half because Komarov's going to be Komarov and Johnston the 13th and 14th forward. So whoever the 11 and 12 are, or 11 or 12 are what you're looking for on that third line. So
quick side note here, while we're on the topic of how other leagues do it, not so much how other leagues do it, but I was listening to I believe it was Ray Ferraro today or someone recently on Spit and Chicklets, and they're toying with the idea or not toying with the idea, but starting to get the feelers out there about how to work the long-term injured reserve. After the Lightning acquired both Marian Gaborik and Anders Nilsson, some people started to question the usage of long-term injured reserve. Should teams be rewarded with cap space if it's a player that they're acquiring who's already on it? Should teams who have an injured player, should they be the only ones who get the long-term injured reserve relief? If that player is traded, should they not be able to? Should the team who acquires him not be able to get that relief? There's a lot of question right now how to work with that LTIR. Because
just make it zero.
Some
just
people
make it zero. I don't understand.
Yeah,
so you're make everyone's life complicated, and then you're trading Chris Pronger's contract and Datsuk's the ghost of Pavel Datsuk's contract forever.
Yeah,
and Marian Gaborik.
Right. Well, yeah.
Who even remembered he was getting paid by anybody?
Right.
Forget about like you can't trade cash anymore. but you're essentially trading cash as long as there's a name attached to it.
Yeah, and I think that Freeman even said that before the Lightning got Gaborik and Nilsson, they actually tried to get Zetterberg's contract from.
Right.
I think is Zetterberg's contract with the Coyotes right now.
I that's what I wanted to say. That was
I
my
think that's
guess.
where it is. So there's just a ton of speculation about how to work out the league financially moving forward. And my best assessment of how to do it is look at a league like the NBA or the NFL. They're doing it right, and that's why you see so much. And maybe this wouldn't be something that everybody wants, but that's why you see so much player movement.
Well,
maybe
they kind of run the show though, especially in the NBA. They're like, oh, okay, we kind of want this team to end their championship drought. Let's go there. That seems like a good storyline. And all the players, they're all hanging out at the equivalent of whatever NBA players do, and not go to a cottage on a lake in Peterborough, wherever the NBA players go. They're mansion in Miami, and so they're bullshitting, drinking whatever they're drinking, and decide that's where they want to go.
Well, I mean,
I don't know that we want the NHL necessarily to go in that direction.
The thing is, bottom line, there's too many loopholes, right? There's too many hurdles to jump over financially, and it makes things too difficult. Whereas they don't need to be this difficult. Joe, I'm not a huge basketball guy. Do they have no movement clauses, no trade clauses in the NBA?
You know what? To be honest, I don't think they do. Basically, the NBA is a league of, I want to go play with my friends.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And listen, they're profiting. They're doing something right, obviously.
Right. And I get players wanting security and stuff like that, but there's got to be a point where we draw a line here and we'd be like, okay, like John said, if a player is injured, that cap is relieved. That's it. It is what it is.
You don't have to play around with it. It just kind of. I think the issue is that when it's on a team, even years ago with the Islanders, but if for whatever reason Bobrovsky got hurt and he had that $10 million, the team has to pay him regardless.
Yeah,
Florida can't afford that.
Right.
They can barely afford. I'm sure they're the cap. The cap and the cash is an issue for them to begin with. If he's playing. Forget about if he's hurt and he's not helping them do anything, and they're worse, although they have two good prospects who are facing off against each other as we speak. So I think that's kind of the problem, is that teams just have cash issues, and Tampa's like, all right, well, we need the cap space and we can afford to pay him. Toronto's like this too. They're like the friggin' bank account of the league. They pay a lot into hockey related revenue, and they do all this kind of stuff. But then they can afford to take on things like LTIR, which I'm sure like players like Sean Horton are getting paid by somebody at this point, or I don't know, Chris Pronger's probably not getting paid by anybody anymore.
David Clarkson.
David Clarkson is a good one.
Nathan Horton,
that's who I'm thinking of. Sean Horton was another guy. He was the fighter of the two.
Yeah.
Both enormous heads, but maybe it just runs in that Horton DNA or something, but that's kind of like, again, just zero it out. But I think the problem is the cash, which some of these teams like Columbus can't do that. Although David Clarkson and Horton, the Leafs
have him, I think.
The Blue Jackets traded LTIR contract. I don't know
something
why.
Like
so much of that stuff I don't understand.
And this is the problem. Again, you want to talk about growing the game. They need to make this where there's transparency, where the common fan can say, okay, the Islanders are having problems signing Mat Brazal because they don't have enough cap space. Here are 3 avenues that they could take. Cut and dry. That's it. It's such a stupid thing, but this is the kind of conversation that puts people to sleep, because it's, well, they could do this, or they could move this money here, or they could put him on long-term injured reserve.
Yeah, now with taxi squads and playing.
No, but this is not the sexy stuff that brings in the fans and everything like that. So make it cut and dry, like you said. Make it zero, whatever you got to do. But
here's the good one. It was like Hoffman signing the PTO in St. Louis, and everyone's like, "What? why is that happening? And you're like, well, they don't have the money right now and they need to make some paper transaction. And it's like,
Yeah.
you lost me. So they're
Right.
playing a game. They're just putting it. And then every team's doing it.
Yeah.
Right after St. Louis did it, because there's only 30 of them. So they obviously talk and they're having conversations anyway. So word probably got out. Oh, this is a good idea. You just have PTOs, which Travis Hamonic, thank God he's playing.
Yep.
Happy to see him in Vancouver with former Islander as coach Travis Green.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent fisherman jersey if you're lucky enough to have one. Travis Green, 39 right on that jersey, looks fantastic. Yeah, it's all these different games. You're totally right, Joe. It puts players to sleep. It makes it so there's like some gatekeeping almost of hockey knowledge. Like we pay attention, right? You're an actual sports writer. James and I pretend to be sports writers and got fancy microphones. So and we still struggle with this, right? Like it's still like you gotta really know. I can't even make my way through half of those athletic articles. Atlantic article too. They're too freaking long, but the athletic articles that go through all this stuff, I can't there's so many moving parts. I don't remember all of it.
I have 6 other professional sports teams in the New York City area across 3 leagues that I have to worry about. And then occasionally another 2 Major League Soccer teams. And then maybe if college basketball is a thing with St. John's, I have to care about that too.
LIU, the both men's and women's hockey teams. There's the Riptide or the Lizards or whatever they're called.
I can't sit down and know every single nuance of this entire thing.
Right.
Make it cut and dry. Make it easy for us to relay this message to the fans. Let's get it going.
Well, I think they, especially with guys like Lamorello around, like it gives them the leeway. And I think what Bettman said recently too was that they're not making things so hard and fast because they want to remain flexible. The more cut and dry it is, while it would be easier for us and it makes, it'd make our job easier, having a podcast and writing about it and all that kind of stuff. And it may just make fans breathe a little bit easier knowing, okay, there's only so many ways this can happen, but it also gives everybody, they have to actually make the decisions more flexibility. They always seem to find a way, which I think is James's point. And whether he said that before or text or whatever we were talking about, Lou finds a way, one way or another. I don't think, Barzal and Beauvillier and Bailey both said that they're confident Barzal will sign. I don't think anyone's out there. I think Burke, Brian Burke or whatever Burke, I can't remember who it is.
You're right, Brian Burke.
Brian Burke on Sportsnet or whatever show he old man yells at clouds about. Also said it's going to be fair. Both sides aren't going to like it, but it'll be fair and it'll be good. They say a good negotiation. Both sides aren't happy with it. It's just a matter of how it shakes out, and it's annoying that they have to kind of jump through all these hoops to get to it. But I trust Lamorello to do it. I don't, I cannot like the Matt Martin deal and also trust him to make this happen, right? Like two things can be true.
Yeah, I exactly. 2 things can be true. You could not like the deal, but at the same time, you have to remember who we're talking about here. I for the longest time before Barry Trotz and Lou Lamorello, it was easy to not trust the organization. Since they've been here, you have no reason not to trust them because they've only succeeded more every year. So again, I've said a million times, it doesn't matter who's on the ice. Barry Trotz is going to get it out of them. It doesn't matter that Lamorello signed Matt Martin to a $1.5 million deal. He's going to figure it out after it's all said and done. But in talking about all this money constriction and everything, it's got me thinking, we've conspired for a while. What's that third line going to look like? Now I'm starting to think this could finally be the year where maybe Trotz does kind of have his hand forced to throw the kids out there in order to be compliant with the cap. Is that wrong of me to say?
I think you'll get half your wish.
Fine.
I think we'll see Pajot flanked by Wallstrom and Leo Komarov.
That's okay with me. You have your skill guy who's defensively responsible in Peugeot. You have your young guy who can score in Wallstrom, and you have Komarov to pick up the slack that maybe Wallstrom has lacking in the defensive department. So, I think that that's fine. I think that third line is good because, again, I know Islander fans wanted to acquire that top six forward and maybe have someone like Anders Lee bump down to the third line. But at the same time, you also want to grow your own, right? And they need the opportunity. And Wallstrom playing on the third line with probably the best center he's ever played with in his career in JG Peugeot, it's a good thing in my mind.
It's not going to be bad. I think Komarov in the lineup would be mostly for special teams. And Trotz trusts these guys. He trusts his team. And he wants to be able to roll four lines, and they've been successful with that. I think what I'm going to be paying attention to is, the little things that Komarov does, assuming he does get in the lineup. I don't want to just say like, I don't like him. He scores 5 goals a season and he's not very good. I'm going to try to pay closer attention to him throughout the season, just to make a special point of seeing best I can what he does away from the puck, because there's something that, again, Barry Trotz won a Stanley Cup. He's been in the league a real long time. Lamoriello, again, signed him to that contract, got him from Toronto, on purpose. It wasn't an accident. I think he's got to be doing something out there that we're not seeing.
It's how he interacts with youngsters. It's just he's a good guy in the locker room, and he's and it's no coincidence where Wallstrom came up last year for a little bit, and Bellows came up for a little bit last year, and whenever Doc Cole got playing time, they were playing with Komarov. It's just, I guess it's just a safe balance, I guess, where I guess Trotz knows where whatever youngster they throw out there, Leo's going to be that opposite to kind of try and pull him back if needed.
Right. Well, and I think that when Sorokin came over, he was sitting between Varlamov and Komarov just to get acquainted and the language barrier and everything. But he was also teaching him how to be an NHL player on and off the ice. So for all those who are Komarov haters out there, listen, I get not maybe liking his contract. I get maybe thinking he's not the best player out there on the ice, but he does everything right in his own end. He does help keep the puck out of the net, and he is a good locker room guy. The Islanders, for the past 2 seasons and going into this season, are they fuel themselves on being close-knit, being a very tight group, and that's what helps them succeed. And I think that's what you're going to continue to see for the foreseeable future. Maybe they'll get that top 6 forward. Maybe they won't. Maybe one of the kids will develop into that. But, time will tell. There's only 7 days as you're listening to this until puck drop for the Islanders. So decisions will come quick. You'll know soon what that third line is going to look like. We do know what the top 6 is going to look like. We think, hopefully Mat Brazal signs some time this week. We will see. But that about wraps it up for us this week, guys. Thank you to everyone for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Nassauman Hockey and find our work at The Hockey Writers. You can support the show by picking up some NHP merch and donating through our Patreon. If you like the show, you can donate just $1. If you want to receive our newsletters and exclusives, you can also subscribe to that content as well. Our newsletters come out every Friday, so sign up and start getting that every week. Very informative. Joe is included in the newsletter as well. You get not only some Islander content, but off the ice with Joe Pantorno. You can find Joe at Joe Pantorno on Twitter. And for a wide variety of sports coverage, including the Islanders, you can get all of his work at AM New York. Until next time, everybody, let's go.